Okay, good afternoon. Is this mic on? Yeah, I think so. Okay, well, I'm Bryan Price. I'm the Chief of the Drug and Alcohol Programs Division at Federal Motor Carrier. And I always like to start these things off by mentioning, within the FMCSA's portfolio of regulations, we've got hours of service and commercial driver's licensing, vehicle maintenance, and I've had an opportunity to work in almost all of those areas, and I know that all those areas impact safety. But I don't think anybody can argue or make a case that drug and alcohol testing and making sure impaired drivers aren't on the road, aren't behind the wheel of an 80,000-pound vehicle, that kind of thing has a major impact on highway safety, right? So what I'm going to talk a little bit about is just some of the quick, obvious things, the controlled substances that under our current regs, I think Grady's going to touch on maybe a little bit of the future, some of the drugs that commercial drivers can't use now. Spend most of the time talking about our drug and alcohol clearinghouse, which has been a real game changer, some of the public data associated with that, the return to duty process that drivers go through. If they do happen to incur a violation, get a positive drug test result, for example. And then we'll talk a little bit about our new, what we call our Clearinghouse 2 rule. Before I go on though, just by show of hands, how many people in here are from industry? Okay, good, fair number then. All right, so I'm going to start out with the obvious. This is just the DOT panel of drugs that we currently test for under DOT tests. So if you're a commercial driver, these things are all non-starters. The most common of which, we get questions a lot about, what if I have a medical marijuana card, from my doctor? What if it's recreational legal in my state? Currently under DOT rules, doesn't matter. It's still a non-starter if you want to drive a commercial motor vehicle. All right. I mentioned the clearinghouse being a game changer. There was a big show of hands on industry, so I know you're at least somewhat familiar with the clearinghouse. The origin of the clearinghouse, this isn't something that DOT or FMCSA dreamed up on their own. This is something that was mandated by Congress, and the reason Congress took an interest in this was MAP 21 way back in 2012, I believe that was, is that industry itself, a lot of you guys are industry, pushed for a clearinghouse. Some of the trucking associations were very vocal about it. We were next door earlier today. One of the things we were hearing, I heard it was number one on somebody's wish list was get rid of the unscrupulous operators, the operators that don't have integrity. I think a big push for why we have a clearinghouse is reputable companies with integrity are doing drug testing, right? And they'd see a driver applicant test positive, and 2 days later they'd see that same driver in their competitor's truck, right? Well, how is that possible? This guy didn't go through a return to duty process. So long-winded way of saying that this is something that industry itself, the operators with integrity, wanted and were instrumental in leveraging Congress to mandate it. So what is the clearinghouse? Simplest way I can put it, it's a database, a federal database we maintain that links positive drug tests or DUIs in a CMV, refusals to test, to an individual's commercial driver's license record, right? And then the way it works is employers have to, as part of the hiring process, check the clearinghouse to make sure an individual doesn't have an unresolved drug or alcohol violation at a prior employer. And then at least once a year, check the drivers on their roster to make sure maybe somebody didn't sneak off and apply at a company that was paying a little better and test positive and not tell you about it. So that's, again, kind of an oversimplification, but that's what it is. It's the simplest way to think about it. It's a big giant shoebox in Washington with all the CDL numbers. And if one of those CDL numbers has an associated drug or alcohol violation, it's hooked up in this clearinghouse to the driver's CDL number. Okay, I call this my cooks in the kitchen slide. This is who all the users are of the clearinghouse. Obviously, drivers themselves consent to you as employers to query the clearinghouse. The companies obviously play a big role in checking the clearinghouse. Then there's also third-party administrators, what we call CTPAs, that handle drug and alcohol testing programs for multiple companies. Medical review officers, substance abuse professionals, and now most recently, our state driver's licensing agencies. So I really got to hand it to some of my predecessors that built this system, because you can see here, there's all kinds of different, again, cooks in the kitchen. They all have slightly different roles. So it was a major undertaking just to build this and have all these different entities with different roles be able to communicate with the clearinghouse and impact driver records. So what have we learned from the clearinghouse data? This is my favorite part. You know, we've had this up and operational now 5.5 years basically. Started off January of 2020. As far as how many different entities are registered in, you know, I won't read all these numbers to you, but we've got over 5.6 million individual drivers are registered in the clearinghouse. This number here, 548,000 employers, that's how many employers are registered to use the clearinghouse. We think that number, we know that number should be higher. You know, we know there are a lot of companies out there that, you know, still, you know, our safety investigators will go out. They encounter companies every day that are like, what's the clearinghouse? What do you mean? I got my CDL guys, but I don't know about the clearinghouse. So we're making efforts to try and improve that number. But again, we know this is something that needs to come up. There are a lot of intrastate companies, school districts, municipalities. You know, every small town in Alabama that has CDL drivers should be using the clearinghouse. But we know that's an area, again, we can improve upon. What have we seen in the way of drug violations since we instituted the clearinghouse? I think this is a pointer. Let's see here. I can't figure out how to make the red light point, but in any event, you can see here, 2022, 2023, we're just over 67,000 violations. Took a little dip, full calendar year 2024. This light blue number here is positive drug test, 53,902, 5421. The little darker, anybody, I know you probably can't read the key, but anybody know what that little darker line is?
Refusal.
Those are drug test refusals. And I didn't have a good sense for how many drug test refusals occur each year. I will tell you, those drug test refusals eat my staff's lunch, because if in 2024 there were 9,589 refusals. It seems from the volume of petitions and things we get that 9,000 of that 9,589 drivers thinks they did not refuse the drug test. So we've done a lot trying to implore or educate employers to make sure your drivers understand when they go to that collection facility and, you know, and they've started that process, maybe they've got a insufficient quantity in their first try. You know, I hear these stories every day that, oh, well, my kid had to be picked up from school, so I thought I could just do it tomorrow. Those kinds of things get reported all the time. The other thing too, I always point out when I talk about refusals, another thing that's included in refusals, you can see here in 2022 there were around 9,000, then we had a big jump in refusals and it kind of came back down. One of the leading contributors to that big jump, it was like a 40% jump in refusals between 2022 and 2023. One of the big contributors to that jump in refusals where specimen actually went to the lab and it came back as what the medical review officers of the labs describe as substituted. So what substituted means? It means it went to the lab looked at it and said, this is not human urine, I don't know what it is. So, I don't know, there was a bad batch of synthetic urine on the market or whatever that the labs were catching, but in 2023, we did see a big jump on that. What are drivers testing positive for? No shocker, the most prevalent one is marijuana. A point I always make here, though, is a lot of times I'll hear a narrative out, kind of just a buzz that, you know, that the clearinghouse is all just about drivers and marijuana. But when you do the math, it's about 60%. It is the most common. So about 6 out of 10 positive tests reported to the clearinghouse include marijuana. But if you flip that over, the inverse of that means that 4 out of every 10 positive tests that get reported to the clearinghouse, almost half, 4 out of 10, are for one of these drugs other than or in addition to marijuana, right? Another point I always make here, when you look at these numbers, and all this is publicly available data, by the way. Another point I always make is that when you look at cocaine, methamphetamine, amphetamines, you know, these uppers that stereotypically bad, dangerous drivers like to use, it's about a third. So one out of 3 positive tests coming into the clearinghouse going to be cocaine, meth, or amphetamine. Okay. What has this done in terms of overall numbers? Well, again, we're talking 6 years worth of data, but this very top line, since we've instituted the clearinghouse at the beginning of calendar 2020, seen over 300,000 individual drivers get a violation reported to the clearinghouse. Now, this is data as of July 1st. As of July 1st, this second line, almost 200,000. 190,000 commercial driver's license holders today are prohibited, meaning they cannot operate a commercial motor vehicle until they go through our return to duty process. Okay? It's a big number. If you think about that, we're sitting right outside University of Alabama football stadium. You know, it holds 100,000 people on a Saturday. You could fill that stadium twice with individuals that have went to CDL school, you know, spent the money on a CDL, and because they have this drug or alcohol violation they haven't taken care of, they can't operate, they can't use that license to operate commercial motor vehicles, okay? Now, so that third line here, that 190,000 are currently prohibited, this is a very concerning number to us. 148,000 haven't started that return to duty process. So in other words, you got your almost 200,000 drivers that aren't allowed to operate big trucks now because of a clearinghouse violation. 3 out of 4 of them haven't started a return to duty process.
Is that 148 out of that 190, or is that?
That's right.
Okay.
It's 148 of this 190.
Out of that, okay.
Currently, they got a red light in the clearinghouse.
I got you.
They haven't even talked to a SAP or designated a SAP. Now, this number is the number of the 304 that have actually gone through the process. At one time, they were red light or prohibited in the clearinghouse. Now they're not prohibited. Okay, and I always like to talk a little bit about the return to duty process because there is a pathway back. You know, I think a lot of individuals think they get that positive test, their career's over. There is a regulatory return to duty process where they select a substance abuse professional, you know, and then designate them in the clearinghouse. And the driver does what the substance abuse professional advises them to do. Or it could be something as simple as watching drug education videos to as complex and extensive as you need in-house treatment. You know, it's up to the SAP to recommend what that treatment is. Then after the SAP says, yep, I think you've done what you're supposed to, I think you're good to go, the SAP declares them eligible for what's called a return to duty test. You know, you just gotta get a clean drug test. And the employer puts that hopefully clean result into the clearinghouse. If they test negative, they're eligible to start driving again, with the caveat that they've got this follow-up testing plan. Our regs, the DOT regs, and by the way, it's the same, and this process is the same whether you drive a tractor trailer for Werner Enterprises or you fly a 747 for United Airlines. The process is exactly the same set of regulations to get back into safety sensitive functions, technical term, after a positive drug test. One thing I will tell you, we hear a lot, and you guys know from industry, is I hear from drivers almost every single day that say, I did exactly what I was supposed to, I went to a SAP, now I can't find a company that's gonna take a chance on me. A lot of companies, maybe somewhat understandably, have basically a zero tolerance policy that says, we're not gonna mess with the return to duty process, you can go somewhere else if you've got a violation in the car. I think a lot of that may be driven by insurance and risk and that kind of thing, obviously. But I do hear that a lot, drivers, day in, day out. Oh, a question in the back, or maybe two.
Go ahead. Of those drivers that have entered the program and have went through the recidiv, you know, how, has there been any numbers driven to see if any of those have reviolated?
Yes, I don't know them off the top of my head. We do see some, what's the technical term? Recidivism. You see some recidivism where you'll see a guy test positive, go through the process, and then test positive again at some point. I don't have the number off the top of my head, but I know we have ran that kind of data to see how many drivers have multiple violations.
Out of those,
back into your next.
out of those 304,000 that have at least one violation, do you know how many of those were from pre-employment screenings? So it's, otherwise you're looking at 148,000 people, drivers that are not in the workforce, but how many were actually drivers?
Yeah, I think I have that. Actually, I don't have it on my slide, but I can get that number for you. We do have a breakdown of how many of them are from pre-employment versus random versus post-accident, that kind of thing. And then, sir, you had a question.
So I was just gonna ask you about, when you do hire someone, I've often heard it's just too burdensome for a smaller company that doesn't have a large administrative staff to satisfy that in just the hours it takes to keep up with it, to submit the documentation.
For like the return to duty process and
Yes.
somebody, we've heard some of that. I've also heard recently that like driver recruiting services are offering to, you know, they'll offer up a pool of drivers and the companies are asking because of that. They will say, okay, yeah, I know this guy's got a clearinghouse history. I wanna see how extensive his follow-up testing plan is before I decide if I wanna hire him. Because the regs require the SAP to prescribe at least 6 unannounced tests over the next 12 months. But some SAPs, depending on what the driver's issue is, what they've tested positive for, they may say, instead of 6 over 12 months, they may say, you need 18 tests over 3 years, you know, on this kind of interval on weekends after you've been off, you know. So it can get complex, and a lot of employers, to your point, look at that and they're like, yeah, no, go somewhere else. But again, you gotta keep in mind, the goal is to keep somebody with a substance abuse problem off the road, but then also give them a chance if they've gone through a treatment program.
So for the repeat offenders, will you, if we did a query on somebody, would we get documentation for both offenses or just the most recent one?
You'll get it all. You'll get their whole history if they've got multiple violations. And you'll get a hit that there's something in the clearinghouse. Obviously, you gotta get the driver's consent first, and you'll see when you pull up their individual record what the history is. Okay, I don't wanna use up too much, are we okay on time?
Yeah, you got a couple minutes.
Okay, just very quickly then, what's, like I said, the clearinghouse itself was a game changer. Everybody said there are 190,000 prohibited drivers. We know that some of those drivers, I don't have the exact numbers, but we run data, we run reports for our field staff. We know that some of those drivers, even though they were prohibited in the clearinghouse and they had a positive drug test, they have ended up at some of those employers that don't know about the clearinghouse. Or again, I keep using this term from next door earlier this morning. Companies that don't have integrity, don't care about the clearinghouse. We know a lot of those drivers continued to drive, right? We see it in inspection data. Unfortunately, we see it in crash data too. We'll see driver crash reports where they weren't even supposed to be on the road because they had a clearinghouse violation. Well, what's made an impact on that is that in November of last year, what we call our Clearinghouse 2 rule went into effect. And basically what that is, in a nutshell, remember I said if you think the clearinghouse is just a big shoebox full of CDL numbers and drivers that aren't supposed to be operating. Well, under this Clearinghouse 2 rule, we started feeding all that data down electronically to each of the individual state DMVs. So if I'm driver Bryan Price, my CDL from Arkansas, I have a positive test in the clearinghouse and haven't gone through the return to duty process. Well, starting last November, we feed that down to Arkansas DMV. Arkansas DMV then downgrades the commercial status on the license. So you think, how has that helped us from a safety perspective? Well, like I said, a lot of these companies, they don't know about the clearinghouse or not using the clearinghouse. Well, when the state steps in and actually downgrades that license at the state level, if that company without integrity at least has insurance, well, if their insurance company runs an MVR on that driver, it's gonna show up that his license is no good. So because of this, we saw a big uptick in calls to our clearinghouse call center when the state started actually downgrading licenses. And anecdotally, when we've talked to SAPs, they said, you know, they started to see an uptick in phone calls and drivers, sometimes with violations that were 2-3 years back, finally saying, oh gosh, state downgraded my license, I guess I gotta do this, what they call it the SAP program. Okay, this just gives you a rundown on a state-by-state basis. I don't know, like, how many drivers are currently prohibited. Like, we're in Alabama, 3,400 Alabama drivers licensed in Alabama should have their CDLs downgraded by the Alabama DMV. Texas, no shocker there, almost 16,000 drivers. I think this is as of August data, August 14th. And that's all I had in the way of kind of presentations. I included do that kind of quickly, but we just want to give you a kind of a high-level overview, what we test for, what kind of drugs drivers are testing positive for, what we're seeing in terms of impact on numbers and the return to duty process.
All right, thanks, Bryan. And if you don't know, we're very lucky to have Bryan Price with us. I mean, you know, as we heard earlier today, FMCSA, and we all know that, you know, a lot of government entities are understaffed at this point. So for Bryan to take his time out to come talk with all of us, we're pretty grateful. And Bryan, thank you for that. It's good information on the clearinghouse. I did look that up for the person in the back, the pre-employment violations, and this is on the June report. As Bryan said, it's public. It's 184,000 violations. That includes both positives and the refusals as well. But so roughly a little bit more than half, about 55-60% of violations put into the clearinghouse are from employment. All right, real quick about us. WorkforceQA, so I'm Grady Phillips, Chief Revenue Officer of WorkforceQA. We've been around for about 20 years doing employee testing. We're a nationwide full MRO and TPA, so medical review officer and third-party administrator, Bryan mentioned in the clearinghouse. We also perform comprehensive background services And just for, sense of scope, we're doing about 800,000 drug tests a year, a few 100,000 physicals. So we do a lot of work both with trucking, air, rail, a lot of DOT. Safety sensitive is our focus of the industries we try to serve. This topic for today is behind the wheel, beyond the limits, tackling impairment in commercial driving, right? So quick hits, the clearinghouse is a success, as Bryan said, great program, geniusly designed, right? I mean, it's very well done, had a little glitch day one just because it crashed from overuse. But other than that, I mean, it's really held up. It's very well thought through. It gives drivers due diligence. It gives you the ability to get back into the program. It gives MROs the ability to put the data in. There's a few little things that are really hard to get through, like the shy bladder, how you deal with those. Is it refusal? Does the MRO get involved? Things like that are really so specific that when you go through a whole discussion on clearinghouse, you end up not being able to convey that level of detail other than when you deal with those specifics, call somebody that does it more often. But even with the clearinghouse being such a success, what I kind of want to go over is that, impairment still exists, right? Both from drug and from some other factors we're doing. So what else can we do? What else is out there? So, tackling impairment, right? So tackling, verb, definitions. You always start these talks with like what's the definition of tackling, right? To make a determined effort to deal with a problem. Yeah, but man, what else could I talk about that was like personal? I don't know, oh, you know what happened Saturday. It's already been mentioned a few times, right? There's this little thing called football going on. So let's tackle the problem, right? Well, in football, a tackle stops a play, right? So you have an opponent that is also skilled. They are making an effort to get past you. You are trying to bring that opponent to stop the play. Now, that doesn't end the game, right? A tackle is just a temporary setback on the offensive side to make it happen. And they're gonna try to readjust their strategy to come back at you again. And so I think that's what we're all doing here is look at what's our strategy today, right? This is not a one-time meeting. We're not gonna solve the problem. We're not gonna end the game, but hopefully we're gonna design a tackle. So as soon as I saw this and like literally 2 days ago, this came into my mind of like, oh, we can just leverage into football just a little bit to deal with that. That's actually an article, that's my father, number 50, Go Dogs, 60 years ago. So we've been tackling problems for quite a long time before that. And in truth, when I first thought about it, I remember the picture, this is the Sports Illustrated article. I thought it was in Alabama, but it's not, that's Michigan. So Alabama went on to win the national championship since 1965, so no offense, equal opportunity here for everyone, right? All right, now, although some people might disagree, the problem we're dealing with here is a little bit more serious than football, right? Life and death. I know it's SEC, yeah, it's kind of close between the two. But in reality, we're dealing with something a little bit more important. So how and why do we drug test, right? And this is something that I try to work into when I talk is, with our current culture, everything old is new again, right? That we're circling back around. 1981, there was a crash on the USS Nimitz on an aircraft carrier. There was a Prowler jet crashed onto the surface. They found that THC, marijuana, the safe drug, was an impairing factor. 1987, I didn't put this in here, there was a railroad accident in Chase, Maryland, where 16 people were killed, 174 injured, when a Conrail train full of people who decided they were gonna smoke marijuana ran into an Amtrak train. This is where drug testing, DOT drug testing came from, is the military with the 1981 Nimitz, and then later the OTDA came from marijuana impairment. We're still dealing with that today. We're gonna run into the same problem if we continue down the road that it looks like we might be continuing down. We've gotta find a smart way of doing with that. Right, so where are we with drug testing? Drug testing is not something we can just do whenever we want to. It is a search and seizure. Falls under the Fourth Amendment. DOT has been designed, again, very well, right, over the years to balance private, public safety with employees' right to privacy. And anybody that goes through the DOT that actually looks at the collections, I always tell this, and I'm remembering an executive at a very large trucking company that called me one time and he said, this person had to drop their pants to do a collection. Yeah, it gets serious real quick if you violate that right to privacy, right? So we're moving forward with some other types of drug testing as well that might change things as we go, but it's important to realize that we are dealing with a very significant issue of public safety when it's talking about drug testing. All right, so how we drug test, why we drug test? It's a component of drug abuse deterrence and detection. It's designed to be an enforcement of our policy, an enforcement of our workforce culture. It is also used as a background check, right? Now, we've talked a lot about impairment. That's what we're doing, is tackling impairment, right? There's a whole lot being said about marijuana testing, does not test for impairment. You can't tell me that this person is high based on, no, that wasn't really what we were looking for. We're trying to decide if you are a person who it's gonna have a problem with illicit drugs as you go through that. So in all, practical reasons, a drug test is a type of a background check. And so that's what we're doing. When you pre-hire qualification somebody, it's, are you likely to have a problem as you go through this? We also have to use it for accident investigative purposes, right? Was this person impaired, or did this person have a lifestyle at the time? Were they impaired? We don't really have a great way of doing that, so we have to go with the technology that exists for the drugs that we have. And of course, random testing enforces that culture to deal with it. We try to be fair, accurate, science-based, and we're focusing on prohibited conduct. So things are gonna change. There's some of these regulations we're not gonna have a hand in if they continue to change, and things are gonna go as we know they have for the past 30 years. So just like football's been dealing with tackling for way over 60 years, we've been dealing with this drug testing and the tackling of the different issues for over 30 years. So, a couple of numbers that Bryan pointed out. I know everybody did all the math immediately, but I'm gonna go over it again. 5.7 roundabout million drivers are in the clearinghouse altogether. Of those, we've got 304,000 violations. One divided by the other, about 5% of total drivers have a violation that are in the clearinghouse. Now, that's a close number. Are all drivers in the clearinghouse? No. Are all employer clearinghouse? Absolutely not. Are all violations in the clearinghouse? Probably not still. Probably most of the violations actually are in the clearinghouse because most MROs are following suit or doing it, but not all to get there. But still, 5% of drivers that are out there. And if you follow the math that was being discussed earlier, about 3% total of drivers are still prohibited, right? 2% have gone through that return to duty process, are in some stage of the follow-up testing program. But, we get 5% altogether. Other sources, when you look at the data, and we'll look at some of this in a minute, show that overall annual positivity is about 2 to 3% of DOT truck drivers, all right? So just quick numbers. It's important to note that with the clearinghouse, and really for the last several years, we added opioids. We changed from heroin and morphine we added opioids, just a handful of them, back in 2018. But really in the last several years since the clearinghouse, there's not been any new testing procedures. Nothing was changed. The clearinghouse just shone a light on what was already there. As Bryan said, one thing it did is it showed employers, it for the most part stopped that gap in the pre-employment where a person could omit that they took a drug test for A and then go to B and then go to C and D. And we, as an MRO, saw that quite often. And we were prohibited from calling, we couldn't tell employer B, hey, you just failed a drug test yesterday. We could not share that information. So the clearinghouse did fill that gap wonderfully. But there's no new procedures. So what's there is what we're seeing. So the question is, what percent of illicit drug users have we tackled? We got a bunch. We got 300,000. We got 5% of drivers are out there. What does that mean? Do we get them all? No. So National Survey on Drug Use and Health. It's an annual survey. I think we only have like 20 data, still a little bit behind on that. This is where they interview people, they survey people. Hey, do you do drugs? No big deal if you do, just let me know. 5 to 12% of commercial truck drivers admit to use of controlled substances within the past 30 days. Use in the past 12 months is 2.5% higher. We're talking like 10 to 20% of people that say, yeah, I do drugs, come get me, right? National NTSA, NHTSA says they estimate that 10% of crashes involve drug use by the driver. It's more than 2, it's more than 5. Why aren't we catching them all? I don't know. Maybe this. Maybe we have a $42 million artificial urine market, like Bryan was saying. Which ones did the laboratory catch? The bad batch of synthetic urine. The good batches go right through some of you guys that know me, I'll even teach a class on why cheaters cheat, right? I'll get all the stuff. I own more artificial urine than anybody will probably ever know. And we run it through labs. It goes through the laboratories. It's designed to not have drugs in it, but just to meet the minimum qualifications for a test. So synthetic urine has a single point of failure, the collector. The person who gets beat up more than anybody else in the industry, beat up on price, beat up on, every collector out there at some point has tested the nephew of a company's owner and got yelled at, or got a driver yelled at them, or, bless their heart, had an MRO call them and say, I need to know more about this, or the FMCSA saying, what do you mean this was a refusal? Like, well, he poured urine all over the place and did this and did that, but you know what, I'll keep my head down. So the collectors don't do a great job. Yeah, Corey.
I think for a lot of drivers out there and a lot of operators as well, there's a lot of confusion when it comes to the thought process of from the moment you're notified of a test, you must proceed, every action you take
Yep.
must proceed directly to, receiving that sample. And a lot of people will think that there's this magical 2-hour window out there. And I've had more people than I'd like to count that we've let go for not proceeding directly, to their clinic for a test. And explaining it to, upper management, for example. I cross-referenced, I looked for stores that sold specific products for that and cross-referenced it using AI to how close they were to within walking distance of a truck stop. To show that a driver, even on their way back, has the ability to stop somewhere potentially, pick up something, delay themselves, and potentially cause an invalid test result.
You make me bite my tongue. I could talk about that for 30 more minutes. Absolutely, and I bet we could have a lot more lively conversation talking about AP than anything else. But the market, so, quick numbers again, $42 million is about $30 a bottle is what you can buy for on Amazon, have it in a couple of days. That's equivalent to about 1.4 million doses, samples that are sold currently. And it's a great investment opportunity here. 9.2% is what, whenever I looked it up, says it's expected to grow over the next several years, right? So it's gonna grow with the economy. Again, this deflates the positivity. There are other reasons. I only have a few minutes with you, right? This is not a long talk. We've got other things to go over. This is food for thought, right? Is this a possibility? I've talked to ELDs about helping to map once you're sent someplace for a random to go directly to it, to make sure that they, as Corey said, do not pass go, do not collect. All right. Hair testing, I'm the first one to bring it up, I'm not the last. I'm looking for what else can we do? Hair testing is something else you can do. According to Quest Diagnostics, which does a lot of hair testing, roughly, 80,000 samples? 20, again, the numbers we have are a little bit dated, for my opinion. I would like to have some 23, maybe 24 numbers, but this is most current stuff. And Wanda, I think, saw this slide, the same slide. I took a lot of stuff from, we have a compliance advisor, Dr. Donna Smith, that actually worked for ODAPSI and helped write Part 40. She was in Florida with us a few weeks ago, and she made the mistake of giving me her presentation. So I got the good slides from it, and I'm just gonna show you what it is. So hair positivity. Now, this is general workforce because hair is not DOT. There is no DOT subset for hair. You can't tell. 13% positivity. Overall, pre-employment, to your point in the back, 10% pre-employment, 20% random, because once somebody gets hired, they've got some money, they're gonna spend it. Hair testing. So the Trucking Alliance, a lot of you, Trucking Alliance, anybody has not heard about it on this? So they have made a continued push to add hair testing to the clearinghouse for a long time. There are different reasons why it's not in the clearinghouse. That's not for me to decide, but it's not currently. You can't take a hair test positive and get it uploaded into the clearinghouse. But you can, as an employer, as a carrier, do hair testing, have a company policy for hair drug testing as a non-DOT as a condition of employment. A lot of companies do this. So doctors from University of Central Arkansas did a longitudinal study of, 900,000 pre-employment urine and hair drug screens compared to the two. Same person, two different tests. They found that the hair test picked up 25% more opioid users, 23% more cocaine users, and 13 times more, not percent, times more, methamphetamine users. Now, Bryan pointed out, 6 out of 10 are marijuana. Something to realize is the biochemistry. THC is a fat-soluble compound. Once you take it in, whether you smoke it, inhale it, or ingest it, it goes into your fat tissue and then slowly leaches out of your fat tissue. That's why marijuana typically stays around a little longer. So that's one reason we see more marijuana positives, is because it's got roughly a 7 to 14-day window in a urine sample. Cocaine, opioids, amphetamine, 2 to 3 days max. If you can't stay off drugs 2 or 3 days for a pre-employment test, a lot of the industry call a pre-employment test an IQ test, right? And if you're random, if you're just dumb enough to not be able to go find synthetic urine, then shame on you. But that's the way it works. So with hair testing, you're gonna see so many more positives testing out. JB Hunt did this, they published this, they'll send it out to everybody. You can see the important points here. Point A, that's the red line at the top. They had a problem with their post-accident testing. They had roughly 4% post-accident test. They said, what are we gonna do? The blue line is when they started testing, hair testing, in addition to their DOT urine testing. Their post-accident dropped to 0. It stayed there for a long time. The random testing started declining and stayed declining for very many years as they've done hair testing. It's a clear indication that as they added hair testing to their profile, other test positivity rates dropped significantly. So I'm a little bit out of time. I ran a little bit long on some of that. So what else besides hair test, right? Bryan mentioned drugs. We don't currently test for fentanyl. I've been on half a dozen podcasts and every single one's like, what? You don't test for fentanyl in the DOT panel? Right. So HHS this year, actually just July 7th, I put it in there, July something, started giving HHS, no, that's not DOT, these are, HHS, Health and Human Services, federal employees, like Bryan, the ability to add fentanyl to their test panel. Did not require it. It's the first time I've seen that. So it's not required under HHS. It's actually an optional test. We do some HHS, some of them have decided to add it, some of them hadn't. It adds a few dollars to the test. We'll see how that goes. We have been seeing more fentanyl testing that's happening in hair, for one thing. Me and a couple of my peers have been surprised how many positives we saw. We used to feel that people that were engaging in fentanyl use were probably below the employed class that was dealing with that. But what we're finding is, as this comment makes in 2024, with 60 million fentanyl pills that were seized, I think is the word I'm looking for, 60 million pills and 8,000 pounds of powder, that people might be buying drugs on the street that they think are opioids and in fact are fentanyl. And that's where we're starting to see some of the fentanyl from. Fentanyl, it looks like maybe we've missed a little bit of the curve. The DEA is really on this. We are seeing a decrease in deaths, but it's still something that we hope that gets added to the DOT panel. Again, tackling more of these impaired drivers. And then lastly, DOT impairment, right? What else? We talked about drugs. That's a good thing. We need to work more on the drug abatement. We need to work on more of the drug deterrence. We don't need these people driving 80,000-pound rigs. If they want to do it at their home, that's fine, but don't get on the street while you're still impaired. But there are emerging technologies that look at impairment as a general rule rather than a drug. So there's a couple out here that have presented to us that are talking to. We don't know really. It's not taking off in the industry just yet, but it's certainly a possibility to say that we can identify if you are actually impaired, whether it's you had a fight with your spouse, you had you're having issues, you're having financial issues, you're on drugs, you didn't sleep last night for some reason, you're not able to operate. Will that technology get to the point in a court defendable position to be able to be implemented across the board, in addition to drug and alcohol, in addition to the fitness for duty and testing that we do? So, a couple ideas, that's all that we had, that's ours. I think I'm probably around on time, but if anybody has any questions, now, sure, go ahead.
Didn't hear anything about saliva testing.
As I said, I only have a little bit of time to go through, so I didn't bring that up. Saliva testing, the benefit over urine is that every test is observed, right? So we see on the non-DOT side actually higher positivity than we do with urine because there's no fake urine on the market for saliva testing yet. That being said, saliva testing only picks up THC for like 24 hours. It doesn't, so the THC metabolite, THC doesn't metabolize into oral fluids. And so you only can pick up the parent metabolite in oral testing. So in a non-DOT world, in California and Washington, where you can't test for a non-active metabolite, we do an awful lot of the oral testing that's out there. And so we have a lot more experience dealing with oral fluid and saliva testing. It's still out there. And Bryan might need to correct me on that a little bit. You gotta.
Well, the only one thing I can say about oral fluid testing is it is coming, like it's been incorporated into HHS's rules. It's also been incorporated into DOT rules. Barrier to like motor carriers using it for DOT tests right now. We still need 2 labs to be certified to analyze the oral fluid test. We've got, last I heard, there was at least 1 lab had applied to Health and Human Services. So as soon as we have 2 labs certified, we'll be able to do you'll be able to do oral fluid tests instead of urine tests if you choose for DOT testing. Again, that's already been incorporated into our rules and Part 40 for all the DOT modes. It's just a matter of getting those
Some of the
labs.
holdups on that are the reagents have to be FDA approved, and not all the reagents have been FDA approved yet, laboratories approved. Ironically, there's a SAMHSA approved laboratory in Canada that could potentially get approval before you, because they don't have to go through FDA approval for the reagents, but we're kind of waiting to see on that. But there's also a little bit of a juxtaposition. Fentanyl is hard, if not impossible, to test for in oral fluids. So if fentanyl gets added to the DOT panel before oral fluid does, it could kick oral fluid testing back for the foreseeable future. And if oral testing gets approved, those laboratories get approved, it could potentially affect the way that we can test for fentanyl with drug tests should have parity. They should be able to be tested for the same thing. So, a little bit of a question on what's gonna happen there. And again, if I had a lot more time, certainly love to discuss that further, but I think we got some ladies from TREDS. Need to give a talk. Yes, ma'am.
What
Quick
about
question.
alcohol? Do y'all have stats on how many drivers fail?
Yeah, it's on that same clearinghouse, report.
I've got them on our public reports. It's obviously much, much smaller numbers, but yeah, we get them. A big one I see, I've seen this more often than I think, is a lot of times the utility guys will go out and work on these projects, where they'll be staying in a hotel. And the safety guy will show up at 7 a.m. to do random alcohol tests, and they've been sitting in the hotel room partying all night. I've seen a bunch of those kind come in from the utility line guys.
Yeah, not nearly as many. I call it get confusing when it's somebody that was called for random, they drove their truck, why they show up drunk, I don't know, whether they were driving they show up to do the test, but they're not on duty, so those are the ones that get confusing, but there's not as many. Did you have a specific question on it, or just
Not
curious?
really.
Okay,
I just wondered if,
yeah, it's a very small fraction.
Very small.
Yeah. But it's one of those, I would suspect if we turned it off, it would significantly increase. You just have to keep the threat alive. That's what a lot of random testing is all designed to be, a deterrent. We're not trying to really catch anybody. We're trying to say, if you're gonna do that stuff, don't do it here. Don't come here. All right, with that, you guys? Start yourself. All right.
How about now? Okay, great. And we've got a clicker. All right, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks so much for joining this session. Today, we're going to talk to you about two programs specific to the commercial industry with our TREDS Just Drive programs. So my name is Jessica Williams. I'm a program manager with TREDS. I'm going to be talking to you today about our distracted driving program. I'll take a quick break from impaired driving, and then I'll hand it off to my colleague, Nicole Herrera, and she's going to talk about our drug impaired education for CMV drivers as well. So first, if you haven't heard about TREDS, we are with UC San Diego, and we are nationally recognized for roadway safety curriculum, training programs, and research. We develop a variety of programs, not just distracted driving and impaired driving. We also have older road user, pedestrian safety, and it's for CMV and the general public as well. So after today, if you're interested in our other programs, please check out our website. We'll have that listed. We have cards so you can see the additional work that we do in education and research. We have multiple funding sources. Today's programs are funded by the FMCSA. We also have some state grant funding as well. So everything that you're going to hear about today is completely free of charge for drivers, for carriers, and anyone that wants to use them. All right, so as I mentioned, we're going to go over two programs today. We've got our Just Drive Deliver Distraction Free program and our Just Drive Deliver Drug Free program. Both of these programs follow a similar format as far as curriculum. We go through the scope of the problem for both of these topics, the risks and consequences that drivers would face, rules and regulations. Since this is nationwide, it's federal rules and regulations. We have done some state-specific presentations in the past, if that's something that you are interested in. We go through prevention strategies, offer certificate of completions, that would be both for our Train the Trainer and driver programs. And we do pre-post surveys, so we can really gauge from the beginning and end of the program if there was a change in not only satisfaction, but also an intent to change driving behavior. So with that, I'll jump right into going over an overview of our Just Drive Deliver Distraction Free program, showcasing a small sample of what's included in the program, as well as how you could incorporate it or share it with others who could use it. With that, we'll start with a trailer.
Finding the right training program is easier said than done. Delivering relevant information to your audience while keeping them engaged is no easy task. Commercial drivers are faced with unique challenges on the road and can benefit from training designed just for them. UC San Diego Training, Research, and Education for Driving Safety, with funding from the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration, developed the Just Drive Deliver Distraction-Free course for commercial drivers, and it checks all the boxes.
Our intent is to increase awareness of driving safety and decrease distracted driving behaviors. We will focus on the use of cell phones and other electronic communication devices.
Drivers view real-life examples of crashes caused by distraction, refresh their knowledge of rules and regulations related to cell phone use, and hear from fellow drivers on strategies to keep the road safe. The 60-minute course is web-based and features interactive elements designed to reinforce learning and create opportunities for drivers to reflect on the risks and consequences of driving distracted. In addition, drivers will learn the dangers of drowsy driving and how to exercise caution when approaching work zones. The best feature? This program is completely free to you and your team. A downloadable certificate of completion will be provided. Help your drivers make safer decisions. Bring the TREDS Just Drive Deliver Distraction-Free course to your CMV drivers.
All right, so there's just a trailer snapshot highlighting our program. You might have noticed it's our old name and logo. I don't know if you caught that. We have since rebranded to Transportation, Research, and Education for Driving Safety. So if you caught that there, we'll need to update. All right, so covering the program components. For the Just Drive Deliver Distraction Free course, there are two options to access this. There's an online driver course. It can be assigned direct to drivers. It's 60 minutes. That's kind of what you saw snapshots of in the trailer. Pre and post course surveys, as I mentioned. It's video based, so there's a lot of visual engagement, but it's also interspersed with learning activities. So there's pauses where drivers can engage, answer questions, clickable images, just to keep that engagement throughout the course. And it is available in English and Spanish. We also have our Train the Trainer option as well. In this, we have an online presentation for those safety professionals that would then go out and deliver the program, whether that be in person for them or if they do a virtual setting. With that, we include a modeling of the full curriculum, as well as some program implementation steps, so how to get it running in your state or locale. We have supplemental materials as well. We've got free flyers to help promote it, driver tip cards that I'm going to show you throughout this presentation. That's all included once a safety professional goes through that Train the Trainer program. And again, that's available online. If you're interested in something in person, just come talk to us. Sometimes we have availability upon request to do that as well. All right, so now I'm just going to give you a brief sample of our curriculum. And here's another video snapshot.
Distracted driving. Distracted driving is anything that takes your attention away from the primary task of driving. Driving is a full-time activity. It requires all your attention. You wouldn't operate power tools without paying close attention. Driving distracted is no less dangerous.
So just a very short snippet. I know someone said we always start with definitions. So this is kind of an intro here. But just to kind of show you, we try to make it engaging. We try to have different graphic elements and animations come in to really describe distracted driving, the science behind it, and of course the risks and consequences. Here's one of those graphics I wanted to showcase as well. We talk about the types of distracted driving and really how it's impacting you, not just visually and manually, but we really go into that cognitive distraction. And of course, as you saw in the trailer, the emphasis is on electronic communication devices, so we really emphasize phones, handheld phone use, hands-free phone use, and of course texting, which involves all three. So as a group, we've got a pretty good group here, and I see a lot of cell phones out. So we're gonna do this together, if you will all entertain me, and we'll do a texting challenge. This is something that we do in the program. It's both in our online format and can be done in person. So with your phone, if you have it in hand and turned on, which I think everybody usually does, at the sound of the horn, which will come up on the next screen, you're going to pull up a contact in your messages, type "be there in 10", don't actually send it or they'll get very confused where you are, and then just look up when you're ready, okay? So not yet. When you hear the horn, go ahead and get started.
Were you able to finish the text before the second horn? The second horn sounded after 4.6 seconds, which is the average amount of time it takes to type and send a text. At 55 miles per hour, this is the equivalent of you driving blind the length of a football field, including end zones, a distance of 120 yards.
That was fast, right? I don't even think I saw a lot of heads pop up quite yet. And if they did, again, that was a quick snapshot of, like Lon, our instructor here said, it only takes 4.6 seconds on average, and look at the amount of distance you can cover. So this is an activity that we do in our curriculum that we feel really makes an impact on that time. We also have a lot of case examples and interactive components. One thing we hear a lot as far as positive feedback on this program is our connection to real world examples. Real testimonials from drivers, real crash stories and data. So we definitely like to include that to showcase this is a human element. This is, I think somebody in an earlier presentation said, you don't know who's in that car, right? It's somebody's wife, somebody's husband, somebody's child, making that people-driven impact. So here is one example of one of these news stories that is in our curriculum.
Seemingly harmless Facebook post, but reading that message at that moment proved deadly.
Any one of us could be him.
I was always on my phone.
Whenever a message alert sounded, he just had to look.
You actually had it in your hand,
Yes,
and you're looking down.
yes.
Frank Ricktick was driving a dump truck on Interstate 90 near La Crosse when his phone signaled the arrival of a Facebook post.
That text message, that Facebook post, all of that can wait.
But Ricktick didn't wait.
Life can change in that second it takes you to look at your phone. I just wish I could go back and re-wake up that morning and not get into that truck.
Frank Ricktick has a lot of time to think about what he did. He's currently serving a 16-year prison sentence in Wisconsin. He doesn't want your sympathy, just your attention. And forget the phone. Keep your eyes on the road.
So here's, like I said, one video example that we would show. We have a few more that just really highlight the risks, the consequences, and that this is something that can become deadly. I mentioned some interactive components, so whether in person or online, we like to get engagement. So if you were in person, for instance, you might do a show of hands and do a poll, and then online we have a lot of interactive elements through our learning management system. So here we ask, which method is riskier, talking hands-free or holding a phone? Anyone want to shout out what you think? We got a holding a phone. We think holding a phone. Most people say that, and they're pretty surprised to find out that they're equally risky. Both have up to 4 times the crash risk. And in our program, I mentioned that cognitive distraction. We really focus on showing people what can happen when you're cognitively distracted, not just manually. All right, and then as far as supplemental materials, I mentioned our Train the Trainer program. We include a lot of additional materials available to anyone using the program. We have a series of short video messages, or kind of PSAs, if you will, Here's a very short snapshot of one of those that's included. So as you can see, we have a series of 8 of these messages. We have ones that are tailored towards trucks and another that are tailored towards buses, all with kind of messages from the curriculum on safe driving. We also have a series of social media messages that anyone can use, post on your website, post on social media, again, emphasizing some of the key facts and finds from the curriculum. So we have promotional materials, and we do have an exhibitor booth as well, so if you wanted to check us out after the presentation, take some of these. We've got our flyer for our online course with the trailer and registration link, and we've also got a tip card out there which has our 4-minute video QR code on there, and that's from CMV drivers talking about personal stories, risks again, and as well as strategies for safe driving and avoiding distracted driving. Now, feedback. I'm going to start with participant feedback on really the trends that we've seen, and this is based off of our post-course surveys after drivers take the course. So we've seen that 96% of drivers state to themselves that they're more aware of the risks associated with cell phone use while driving after taking this course. And 95% intend to change their own cell phone behavior while driving. Really, really great, strong numbers to see. Here's just some quotes you can see. I really like this first one. I thought I was being safe regarding phone use while driving. I was seriously lacking. Now I know the extra steps I need to take. Thank you. And then before I hand off to Nicole, I'll go ahead and show you a last video here on instructor testimonials.
Deliver Distraction-Free course is designed for commercial drivers to prevent distracted driving. Let's hear from instructors who have completed the training and deliver the course to drivers.
Since TREDS version is exclusively designed for commercial drivers, it shows direct big truck accidents. And that really hits home.
We're talking about real people, real incidents that are happening across the country.
It has news stories that go along with scenarios and situations that you can actually relate to. It provides the consequences to the actions and behaviors of individuals.
You're not just throwing stuff out there and saying, okay, this can happen. No. You're doing an interview with a guy that's doing 10, 15, 20 years in prison for distracted driving. Telling you you're going to learn things that are going to be able to be put in your toolbox.
It really made a big difference in our accidents. Our insurance company praises us continuously for using it.
Everyone should be taking this because it will pull you from a complacency that I bet you're in and didn't realize it.
The impact for us was outstanding. I knew it was going to be very influential and helpful in my quest to keep our drivers from driving distracted.
We're all in it together, so if we can do this in one small section and teach us in your small company or your large company, I think that the impact will just continue to grow.
Just Drive, Deliver Distraction-Free is making roads safer, one driver at a time.
All right, and then just a last little bit here. If you're interested in accessing the program, we have a QR code here that links to our website. And again, we have the CMV driver course as well as the Train the Trainer available. Both of those are online, and the Train the Trainer you get, after you take it, you get a zip folder with all of the materials. So it's really a plug and play. And with that, I'll go ahead and pass it off to Nicole, back to drug impaired driving.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. Again, my name is Nicole. If you see me looking down, I'm checking the time. I do not want to get in between you and your break. I know we all need it after sitting all day. So again, I am going to be talking about our second program, which is our Just Drive Deliver Drug-Free course. And like what was done previously, I'm gonna highlight a little background on the program, go over any engaging content that we might have. But first, our trailer will provide a quick overview.
Commercial motor vehicles, CMVs, are crucial to our economy. However, their size, weight, and limited maneuverability increase the likelihood of severe injuries and fatalities in crashes. These dangers are significantly amplified when the vehicle is driven by someone under the influence. An alarming rise in positive drug tests among CMV drivers underscores the urgent need for specialized training on the dangers and consequences of driving impaired. With funding from the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration, FMCSA, UC San Diego Transportation Research and Education for Driving Safety, TREDS, developed the Just Drive, Deliver Drug-Free course for commercial drivers, and it delivers. The course explores the scope of drug-impaired driving and factors contributing to drug use among CMV drivers. Drivers will gain a comprehensive understanding of the risks and consequences of driving impaired and ensure they are up to date on the current laws, regulations, and testing procedures. In addition, the course equips drivers with practical strategies to prevent drug-impaired driving. The 60-minute course features current data from the FMCSA Drug and Alcohol Clearinghouse, real-life examples of crashes resulting from drug-impaired drivers, and opportunities for drivers to reflect on their own behaviors behind the wheel. With the goal to help your drivers make safer decisions, this program is completely free to you and your team. Upon completion, drivers will receive a downloadable certificate to recognize their commitment to safer driving practices. Working together, we can make our roads safer for everyone. Bring the TREDS Just Drive, Deliver Drug-Free course to your CMV drivers today.
So this course is currently offered as a Train the Trainer, and basically what that means is that includes a detailed curriculum model and step-by-step guide for implementation. So those trainers will receive access to a 60-minute PowerPoint that's available in both English and Spanish, as well as any pre- and post-course surveys that they might want to implement within their team. Along with that, we also have case examples, learning activities, and of course, a certificate of completion. We also have supplemental materials, and again, the online training is available in English and Spanish. So now I'll go over a sample of curriculum, similar to what was done previously. I'll just highlight pieces from our Train the Trainer. So again, with our question, what is drug-impaired driving?
Drug-impaired driving. It's driving under the influence of any substance or combination of substances other than alcohol, which could affect the nervous system, brain, or muscles, and impair the ability of a person to operate a vehicle safely.
Great, then we also highlight the leading substances that are found as what we've heard previously in the Drug and Alcohol Clearinghouse. I won't go into much detail. This data was pulled from 2020. The courses are regularly updated, so you will see data that's pulled in those courses currently that are more up to date based on what is out there in the Drug and Alcohol Clearinghouse. But really, we want the drivers or whoever's taking these courses to understand that these drugs and their effects have consequences if you decide to consume them and get behind a wheel, especially of a large truck or bus.
The process has these steps. First, an evaluation is conducted by an SAP. Next, drivers are referred to and must successfully complete the educational and/or treatment plan. Then an SAP conducts a follow-up evaluation. Drivers must then complete a negative RTD test.
So the video you just saw really goes over the laws and testing procedures, as was mentioned, the SAP process and the return to duty process that we see, or that's required of drivers if they were to have a positive drug test come up. Great, I will kind of fly by this. I think I've got about 2 minutes, so bear with me. So these next few slides will go over case examples and various interactive components. If I don't get to all of them, I apologize. Like Jessica mentioned, we do have an exhibit table, and what Jessica shared previously is very similar to what we have in our program as well. So if you've seen it with the distraction free, you'll also see it here.
Noon, the Texas Department of Public Safety arrested Jerry Hernandez, the driver of the cement pump truck that hit a Hayes CISD school bus and a following car 1 week ago, resulting in the deaths of 2 people.
We don't know that he was intoxicated and he hadn't slept.
Court documents reveal Hernandez admitted to investigators he had 3 hours of sleep and smoked marijuana the night before the crash. He also admits using cocaine early the morning of. As a result, Hernandez now faces a criminally negligent homicide charge.
Okay, again, like we've seen, we also like to incorporate interactive components into our program just to keep the participant engaged, making sure they're keeping track. We've seen this question and we've alluded to what the answer might be based on that clearinghouse data. And of course, we always share with them what that answer might be and really go into detail of what the effects can be or what the impact it can have on the road as well. Now onto participant feedback. So instructor impressions, 98% agreed that the curriculum is a useful educational program for drivers, and 96% agreed that the curriculum effectively covered impaired driving risks and consequences. Again, a testament to our team and what we've put together in order to create something that's valuable for drivers. Some instructor testimonials, very well put together, very nice presentation, great information and training, got me engaged with the questions and videos. And this is a dense topic, right? A lot of it's really just teaching people about drugs and their impact. So we really do try our best to make sure that we're as engaging as possible. So to hear that is it's always great. Some supplemental materials that we have to offer. We provide an outline if you're an instructor that wants to present this course to your drivers. We have an outline that provides a condensed version of the notes, really highlighting the main points of the curriculum that you can print out and have easy to access, as well as a list of references that highlights all the sources that we use in the curriculum. We also have flyers, not just for drug-free, but for distraction-free as well. Again, as Jessica mentioned, we do have flyers at our table that you can post online, around your organization, wherever it might be, that might be useful for drivers, let them know what's coming up, what kind of training they'll be receiving. And of course, certificate of completion. Once they complete the course, they'll be able to access this, put this in their file, make sure they stay up to date on relevant information. So again, you can access this course through our website or by scanning this QR code here if you wanted more information. Both of our courses are available on our website, so if you wanted to head there, you may, along with other courses that we also have to offer. And again, they are completely free. So that's all I have to share about the drug-free program. If you have any other additional questions, I know I'm on time, so you might need to catch me at the table. Thank you for sitting 2 extra minutes with me. You can contact us here. Thank you very much.